So I'm going to start explaining all the situation as I've been constantly trying to for I don't know how long, being honest with you. And I think it needs to come out once and for all. But there's one thing I want to address there now, which has come up basically the last couple of weeks. I only found out about this recently actually. I'm just going to say this is regarding the friend request Mr. Conan sent my wife, right? Sinn Féin members have portrayed basically that was a fake profile page, and this was circulated a long time ago basically in an effort to discredit me. First of all, that was 100% a real page. I sat down and I went through your page with my wife because I was going to fucking respond to you for a start, because I was so pissed off that you had the neck to do that, because only hours before that we had a conversation through that page where I brought up the corruption in Waterford and certain people that were involved in it, and you answered me back saying there was nothing you could do about it. Do you recall that? That was all off the same page. So for you not to go around spreading it, that was a fake profile and making me look like a liar, it just shows you how deceitful this person is. Do you know what I mean? And how privy his cronies are to spreading their lies on his behalf. And if only the rest of Waterford really knew what they're actually covering up. Not to mention then, there's also like Henry Halligan's actions out in Tramward. There was private emails sent to a priest, which I keep talking about. And you were mentioned in the emails, Mr. Conlan. And Henry Halligan took it upon himself to print off the emails, withhold them from the priest, and pass the emails back to you. So why would Mr. Halligan feel so obliged? So why would Mr. Halligan feel so obliged to have to pass emails back to you? Do you know what I mean? Some favoritism going on there. Like, what else are you pulling strings for? So basically, that fake profile, that was a friend request he sent my wife when my ex came down for Dublin, and she spread all this sexual stuff, all this, and it was actually his cronies who canvassed for him and spread it on behalf of my ex. And he, that morning, I brought up a lot of attention to him. He answered me, fobbed me off, and then later that night, trying to provoke me, he sent my wife a friend request. And I was on the page with my wife. This is true, as my kids are alive. And I went through the whole website because I was going to respond, as I said, and my wife talked me out of it. So, like, for you to turn around now and say that this is a fake profile, this is what's going on in Ireland. You have these TDs claiming fake profiles. And basically, I tell you what, actually, if you want to come forward and say when your fake profile was circulated, right? And I'll respond then with what I have. And then we'll see which one of us is lying. So I just thought I wanted to bring that up because I'm sick of being threatened by the likes of these Sinn Féin fucking cronies, people using Sinn Féin's name and the IRA name to keep certain topics covered up. Do you know what I mean? And your favouritism towards Henry Halligan, just like Bishop Alphonsus, who covered up for Mr. Halligan at Ballybeg Church, doesn't go unnoticed. And when I'm talking about my story, hopefully in a more precise manner, I will get to it, and I'll upload all documentation, including the emails that Mr. Halligan passed back to you and that the Bishop covered for. And then we'll see who's lying. And when I went to speak about this, as you know, there was an ongoing kind of like harassment, a lot of it by these members of Sinn Féin. And my views on my channel, they were up around 900 and something. Then there was a meal, spoken about this now already, there was a meal in November 2022 down the Tower Hotel. And after the meal, then my views, I'm not sure if you can see this thing down there. You see that? The views jumped up anyway on my channel to over 10,000 views, which can only be misconstrued as a kind of veiled threat. This happened in the days after that meal on the Tower Hotel. And they didn't join the channel, they just viewed the channel, because that way it can't be kind of proven who the people are, if that makes sense. So basically it happened days after that meal in a veiled attempt to try and shut me up, that I'd feel pressurised because of having 10,000 people viewing your videos all of a sudden. Obviously I put two and two together, and I was supposed to be scared off and not talk about the truth. But now they're going around saying that fucking that friend request he sent me wife was fake. That was 100% real. Or so was the message that you sent off of the same account only hours prior, if you recall, where I brought up certain corruption in Waterford. Do you know what I mean? And if you want to come forward about like the emails Mr. Henry Halligan passed back to you, I'd gladly speak about them online, which I'm going to in due course. It's just there's a couple of things kind of getting under my skin, as you'll probably notice. So I wanted to start talking about these first. In October 2022 there, my ex, who basically is the root of all of this kind of shit, to be honest with you, she appeared on a podcast down in Cork called The Two Norries. It's a pretty famous podcast. She basically spun her usual bullshit and her lies, basically, and if you read her bio, because it's all over social media, she claims that she walked out of rehab on the 8th of the 8th, 08. This is all lies. I came out of rehab the 28th of the 8th, 08. I was born the 28th, lived in 28, we moved from 28, my mother was married in 28, my father's birthday was the 28th, so the 8th kind of meant something for my mother and my ex, knowing this, just trying to kind of cause more shit. She decided to steal my date that I came out of rehab. Now I have that tattooed on my arm, I showed in my last video. Like, why would I have somebody else's date on my arm? But to cut through but to get back to the story anyway. Yeah, she appeared on this podcast in October, The Two Norries down in Cork, and she basically slandered me. And just because she left my name out, she named me as Lily's father from Waterford. Now we all know who Lily's father from Waterford is, and people will know of the sexual slander right around Waterford. Well, if you listen to the podcast now, she's saying another thing. Do you know what I mean? She's saying that I continue to take drugs after rehab and all this kind of stuff. I'm going to address what was said in the podcast, being honest with you, but at the moment it's in the hands of another person. And if it's not resolved, I'll be taking legal action. So I have to wait for the podcast to get back to me, being honest with you. But I will address what's on the podcast. Because once and for all, this person and our lies needs to be called out just because she's hiding behind some bullshit charity thing up in Dublin, some hair thing that she's doing, which was realistically was an agenda that was put together by this Baha'i religion group, which she also conveniently forgot. But I'll bring all that up, and I know this is a bit all over the place. There's a couple of things annoying me now, so I'm going to try and start explaining all this if I can. So in 2008, right, I met my ex in rehab. She was there for drugs, I was there for drugs. This is the way it was. She left her partner, she cheated on him with me. We left rehab then. I got her pregnant pretty soon afterwards. We moved down to Tranmore. That was it. She was told she was basically told that she was to give up working for a number of years, that she had an issue with people pleasing and kind of being the centre of attention, that it stemmed from apparently from her childhood or some shit like that, according to her anyway, that this is why she done it. So we moved down and we were only there kind of a couple of months and she went back down here. Now I didn't know any different because I never encountered this kind of behaviour before, but she spent morning, noon and night just out down here. And kind of, to be honest with you, like, I wasn't that long at a rehab where I realised then that not only did I not love her, like, I didn't really like her as a person, being honest with you. And there's nothing wrong with that, it's just like it is what it is. And I was only with her then to keep the kids in Waterford because there was a better quality of life in Waterford than there is in Ballymun, and that's no reflection on Ballymun, it's just simple facts. So as she was constantly doing here from like 9 in the morning to 9 at night, occasionally we would get drugs and we'd stay in a hotel and stuff like that. We'd get a babysitter and stuff like this, and this was kind of, it's going on for a number of years anyway, until eventually then I had enough of kind of like, I was a glorified kind of babysitter. I know you can say like a babysitter for your own kids, but it was just kind of, I wanted to do other things in life basically, and I wasn't given the opportunity, I felt. So I decided then I wanted to kind of break away from her, so I moved out. But she got the kids to ask me to move back in after a week or two, so I moved back in, if I'm being honest with you. So she promised basically take a step back from doing the hair and all this and be more family orientated, and basically she wasn't. And then eventually, more or less the same shit happening again. We were still taking drugs, staying in hotels and stuff like this, and this was around 2010, 2011, and then eventually then I had enough and I moved out again, and I moved to an apartment up in Tranmore Hill, and this was got for me by Waterford Raz. And there was an issue, it was a one bed apartment, But I was taking both the kids, and we said to the neighbour down below us that I'd only have the kids on 2 days a week, and I had the kids for kind of more or less 6 days a week, every kind of more or less every day. And the neighbour started complaining that he couldn't sleep, that like the noise of the kids upstairs, that we had said that we were only going to have the kids for 2 days a week, and I have the kids every day of the week. So he was complaining, and then one day he passed a remark to the kids, and it kind of provoked me, if I'm being honest with you, and an argument ensued. Now this little cretin, he has a name out in Tramore, he's a horrible little person. I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, the person from Waterford Council, from Raz, she got me a 2-bedroom apartment over in Appalonian Apartments, which is not far from Tramore Hill. So we moved over there because of this neighbour down below putting in constant complaints and the aggravation. Like, it got pretty heated one stage on the street, where it was kind of in everyone's best interest there now if kind of myself and the kids just moved out of there, because like, as far as I know, then no one could even live in the same apartment block as this kind of little. So then so I think I was actually only in that apartment for 3 or 4 weeks, and then the same thing again, she would get the kids to ask me to move back, and I'd never be able to say no to the kids. And people in Tramore will know that fucking I really are both those kids. Sorry for the bad language there. That I had the kids morning, noon and night, and kind of it suited me that she was gone, if I'm being honest with you, because like life was just a less stressful when she wasn't around. If I'm being honest with you, so that was around 2011, 2012. No, 2012 it was. And then I moved back on the condition that I wanted to do my own kind of thing, and I joined a psychology course in Tramore ETV. And when I joined the psychology course, the tutor there, Pat Carey was his name, he was inviting some of the students up to his house. He was talking about this religion, Baha'i religion, it's called Bihai. He was a psychologist. There was several of the students went up, and I was talking to him at lunch breaks, and he was asking me kind of what was going on. I was saying that I was in a relationship that I felt trapped in, that I was only with her to keep the kids in Tramore, and he was basically sending me for information. And I was saying she's part of a women's group in Tramore, and after that conversation, then his wife turned up pretending to be hanging flyers outside of her women's group. And she said she was hanging around for about an hour and a half outside, pretending to be hanging, waiting for the group to be over, obviously. So when she went out, then she basically made it her business to speak with me ex. She signed us up as a family to attend this Baha'i thing. The posters were for spiritual nourishment and people struggling in relationships. So they were aimed at us, if I'm being honest with you. So she signed myself and the 2 kids up to this. And the meetings would take place up in the tutor's house up in Tramore, up in Clarenwood. Obviously, the first time I went up then and I seen the tutor, I was like, this is a weird coincidence. And I never put 2 and 2 together. That was the information I was after telling him on the breaks of the classroom, that he was after obviously going back and telling his wife. His wife was a psychologist employed by Waterford Tussle. So she knew very well what she was doing. And as time passed, then we slowly got lured into this kind of religion. I got to the stage where there was kind of these meetings, kind of prayer meetings once a week, right? And then she was kind of calling down to the house. And then it got to a stage then we couldn't get rid of this woman out of the house. I'm not joking with you. She was there morning, noon and night. She would come down to drop a book. She'd always have some kind of an excuse to come down and constantly push this kind of positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. And like, she spotted in me ex that she was like a kind of lapdog when it comes to any kind of attention. So she would praise attention on her. And my ex's friend, she had also joined with her kids. As she'd be looking at me, I'd be looking at her. And like, the amount of attention that she was like lavishing on my ex, like she was clearly like manipulating her. And anyone there knew that she was manipulating her. Like, it was so over the top. I know this all sounds crazy there now. So we ended up kind of more or less in this kind of Baha'i religion further and further. And she was kind of, I'm not joking with you, she was daily hanging around the house at this stage. This woman, this psychologist employed by Waterford Tussle. And it got to the point then where like I started seeing this, if I'm being honest with you, as a cult. I seen all the positive reinforcement and the negative reinforcement, the pecking order. Like these are all stuff that cults uses. They ostracize you from your family. They tell you that they're your new family, that it's okay if your family are disbelievers to cut them out. This kind of stuff. They have their own laws. They have their own sentences. All of this stuff they don't tell you though at the start. They only tell you this when you're further in. They give you workbooks, stage 1 books, and it's a series of questions, and they talk about like they basically ask you questions and you write in your answer basically, and then you leave the books there with the psychologist. So basically what they're doing is they're profiling you. They're getting a picture of how each person thinks. But I didn't see that at the time, to be honest with you. I was more interested in keeping the kids in Tramore than letting them go to Ballymun. So I just done what I had to do, if I'm being honest with you. So then they announced the kind of play day for the kids down in Kilkenny. So we went down anyway, and when we got there, then they had a Kilkenny College rented out for the weekend basically. Then we informed that I wanted a play day, that we were obliged to stay there the weekend. This was on the Friday. We were supposed to stay there till Monday morning or something. And I wasn't happy with this. The kids weren't happy with this. Obviously, me ex was getting like loads of attention, being portrayed as this is the next. Obviously, being portrayed as like she had so much potential. Everyone she was introduced to, she was like, "Oh, this is like such and such a person. She has so much potential," and she loved anyone talking about her. That was kind of her whole thing, kind of. And even the lies that she was after spinning like to this person about like her struggles, or she had to come through, like basically I didn't say anything. As I said, we were still taking drugs and going to hotels and all this, and she was after telling this woman that she was off drugs so many years and all this kind of stuff. Like, not only were we off drugs, like she was bringing down her own drugs because she was getting them cheaper in Dublin. Like, this is another thing she left out of the podcast. Do you know what I mean? So that was around 2014, and then the kids were taken off to make pizza. And when the kids came back, I said, "How was it making pizza?" And they said they weren't allowed to make the pizza dough unless they repeated this prayer over and over and over again. So basically, it was basically conditioning, is what it can only be kind of construed as basically. And then there was lectures for the adults that we went to. One or two of the lectures we went to where they spoke about this Bahoy, and I felt it was all kind of set up. Being honest with you, I felt there was people in the crowd to ask questions that was rehearsed. The answers were rehearsed. Not only that, then there was shops there as well selling merchandise for this Bahoy stuff, and then they told us then that they were locking us in, and they said, "Oh, that we weren't to worry, they weren't locking us in, that they were locking the thieves out," because they look down their nose at just generally everybody, if I'm being honest with you. So I wasn't comfortable with this, as you could imagine. And I said that we weren't going to stay the weekend. The kids were relieved, I was relieved, so we left that day. There was no way in the world we were staying. My ex's friend, who was actually in my psychology class also, she left. Same kind of thing. She seen it for what it was, and she left as well. She was also invited down as well because she was in the women's group with my ex, and she had signed up to this, but she has slowly kind of seen it for what it is and backed out with this as well. So when we came back to Kilkenny then, I was like, I'm done with that. I want out of it. I want the kids taken out of it. It's not more than a cult. Obviously, my ex wouldn't kind of hear anything bad about it because she was getting so much attention out of it. That's all that really mattered, I'm being honest with you. So basically, it was her and the kids in it. This went on for about 3 months. And as I said, I was still in the psychology class. And I was coming to the end of it there. I was about 9 months into it. And basically, to try and lure me back into this kind of Bahoy thing, I was offered to get a grade in the psychology class. All I had to do was come down and just sit in the class. And obviously, I couldn't even sit in the class because I deemed him to be a manipulating liar, being honest with you. I deemed the teacher should have been reported, the tutor, Pat Carey, that he should have been reported, that he shouldn't have been left to teach if he's inviting people up to his house. And this is where these prayer meetings happened, up in his house, up in Clarnable. That should never go on. There's a code of ethics and a code of conduct, and that was breached. then they started taking the kids off kind of like for kind of day outs, and as I wasn't a Bahoy members because they don't mix with people outside the Bahoy, so I wasn't allowed to go. So they basically cut me out of the kids' life and kind of dangling the kids under my nose, knowing that I was missing the kids, and this is the kind of manipulation that they kind of do, and yeah, trying to lure me back in, and basically I had enough of this, and as I said, I had the other apartment up in Apollonian Apartments, and I moved back up there for about a month. But as I said, even when I was living up there a month, we were still getting babysitters and we were still taking drugs, believe it or not, like doing what adults do, being honest with you. Another way they tried to lure me back is like they put a ban on us having sex. They said that like one Bahoy can't have sex with another non-Bahoy. So if I wanted to have sex, I had to change kind of to this Bahoy religion, which there was no way in the world I was going to. So I moved out for a couple of weeks, and this was the end of 2014. And I seen this for what it was. It was a glorified cult, if I'm being honest with you. Then in the end of 2014, unfortunately, my father got sick, and he didn't last too long. He passed away at the start of 2015, and it was a tough time. So as soon as my father got sick, then she invited me back down to the house, got the kids again to ask me to come down. I was only gone out of the house in 3 or 4 weeks, so I went down just to be around the kids and more than that, and being honest with you. But I had this psychologist one morning, noon and night fucking hanging around telling me she was going to say these prayers for my father. Now I detested these people at this stage. I didn't even want to be in the same room as them. But when I'd call down anyway, they do this thing where they'd be whispering in one room about me. And then when I'd walk into the room, they'd walk out of the room. Then I'd walk out of the room, they'd walk into the room. This was going on, all these little kind of weird mind games. Too many to go into, being honest with you. But even the child copped it, and she started laughing. She's like, why are you doing that? Like, thinking it was some kind of game. But that was the kind of stuff that was going on. And at this stage, then occasionally my family would be calling out, and my ex would be draped all over me, pretending we're the loving boyfriend and girlfriend, and like, so I didn't burden them with all this. So that's what was really going on. And then in 2015, as I said, in January, my father passed away, which was a tough time. And at the funeral, then my ex turned up, and she never brought the kids. And my father was really close to both kids, but she never brought the kids. She turned up to the funeral anyway, and to all my family, she was there draped all over me, doing the whole kind of boyfriend and girlfriend thing. But she did bring these two psychologists of this Bahoy. They had the neck to turn up at my father's funeral. Now I didn't speak to these people. I detested these people, if I'm being honest with you. And like, I couldn't believe that they were there, and she never brought the kids, because the kids would have known like, what are these people doing here. They would have known how I felt about these people and that they shouldn't have been there, basically. But her friend turned up, my ex's friend turned up. She knew how I felt about these people, and she pulled me to the side. She said, what the hell are these people doing here? And I was like, I don't know what they were doing. They're obviously trying to play some kind of mind games. And I always felt I knew this kind of woman psychologist from Waterford Tussler. And as I was at the funeral, I looked over and I seen her talking to someone at the funeral there. And it clicked on me then exactly who this person was. And she looked over and she seen me looking over, and she knew that I knew who she was. And she left, her and her husband, they left as quick as they could. So I realised who that person was. I'm going to have to tell you a quick story now about it, right? Years ago, there was allegations of sexual misconduct. Not against me now, I was a witness in this case though, right? And it was about the child of a Tussle employee against another person. I can't say too much. How am I going to say this? I'll just leave it at that anyway. But basically, I was a witness in this, right? And the interview took place out in Arkeen. There's a little small buildings on the left-hand side as you walk in there. And I was brought out there myself, this other person, the alleged victim, and a social worker called James Kennedy. And we were brought in, and there was an interview that lasted about an hour. I thought the woman that was there doing the interview was a Vanguard, given how serious the situation was. But I noticed then when we were there that the allegations were actually 7 weeks prior to the day we were there. So obviously I was questioning, why are you only looking into this now if it's 7 weeks ago? Because the person had been left in the care of the alleged perpetrator for those 7 weeks. Do you know what I mean? So obviously that was an issue. And then we finished up after about an hour. And then the next day I rang up James Kennedy to find out like what was the next kind of steps to be taken by the guard. And he informed me that she wasn't a guard, she was a psychologist employed by Waterford Tussle. And she has decided that there'd be no guards involved, that she's decided basically to keep it internal. The girl that made the complaint about what she'd seen, she was deemed as troublesome and she was moved away. Obviously I wasn't happy about this. Obviously I wasn't happy that this psychologist took it upon herself to keep the guards out of something that like realistically the guards should have been involved in. And that psychologist turned out to be Anne Carey, which is the same woman years later who lured me and my family into this religion. Now, she breached loads of codes, conducts and code of ethics here or there now, but it's suited Tussle for this woman to do this because, as I said, it was 7 weeks after the alleged incident, so it suited Tussle for her to basically sweep it under the rug, which is basically what she done, and swept it under the rug. But that woman that done that was Anne Carey, and she kind of had long hair halfway down her back at this time. And then years later, when she lured my family in, she really had short hair, kind of like a boy, kind of. So I never realised who she was, but I always thought I knew her from somewhere. And basically, obviously, I did. And to go back to like after my father's funeral, obviously I was after realising who she was. She knew I was after realising her. When I got back home, I told my ex who she was basically, and that I was reporting her and I was reporting her husband and all this. And literally, my ex literally left and went straight up and told her. There's no word of a lie. She literally left the house, drove up there and told her everything. She came back down, packed her bags and said she was going up to Dublin for a chillax. I had buried my father like a couple of hours earlier, and she left. And she texted me then to say that I was to take all my stuff and move out of the house by the time she got back. To be honest with you, I was in the middle of packing and moving out anyway. And my family called and I had to try and tell my family that she had important hair to do one wedding because I was so embarrassed over what she was after doing. And that's basically when the shit hit the fan, basically. When I realised who this psychologist was, the shit really hit the fan. Because I was a real threat once I knew this, and I was starting to tell people about the actions and what was going on in this kind of Baha'i religion, about what had happened down Kilkenny, the stuff that they were not telling people about, the kind of like ostracization, telling people they'll be our new family, like, and they totally agree with manipulating people in under any circumstances. The way they look at it is if you can manipulate them into the group, they can be pressurized enough by the group to change their way of thinking. That was the whole kind of strategy. These whole books that you wrote in like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, you're supposed to work your way up the stages, but realistically they're kind of stringing you along. Kind of when you get to number 2, then they'll have someone else in number 1, they'll have someone else in number 3. It's basically what cults do, if I'm being honest with you. And you have 2 psychologists basically gathering information and profiling people. Like, I believe he should have been struck off from Tramori TB from teaching psychology for inviting any kind of students or whatsoever. At the end of the day, the students were up in his house learning this religion. Like, I complained later, and I'll get to that because I want to try and explain all this in timeline. So I buried my father in January 2015, and I realised who this psychologist was and the gravity of who this person was and what they're covering up, basically. So there's a bit of back and forth texts with me ex, kind of like the usual shite when you break up with someone, being honest with you. So to nip that in the bud, I went down in February and I started all legal proceedings against me ex because I wanted access, custody, guardianship. Now all of this in her podcast, if you listen to it in October, she more or less kind of left all of this out and made it look like that she was the one that had to struggle through she was the one that struggled through courts and all this kind of stuff. Like, she failed to mention how like she broke multiple orders in the court and kind of like, And as I said, we were still taking drugs up until like 2014. All of this she left out of her podcast. And whereas we were getting the kind of cocaine in Dublin for cheap because she was getting it, she was actually secretly also getting heroin, which I didn't know. I don't take heroin. And basically, I only found out about this when people in Dublin rang me looking for the money that she owed. That's how I found out about this. And she left all this part out kind of. And when I approached her about the money that she owed in Dublin for the heroin, she just laughed and said she can't believe that I didn't know she was back on it long ago. So that was it. But she left all that on her podcast in an effort to kind of fabricate her own past, which is basically what she's doing. And because she's linking her name now to a kind of charity event, kind of like, because this is what this Bahoy wanted to do. I meant to say that she had loads of hair clients, and the Bahoy were always kind of like, invite your clients up, because she was the link between kind of working class people and these people would be upper class. They look down their nose at everyone. And this is basically what they're looking for. They're looking for someone that was in the position to kind of lure people into this. And I know this all sounds crazy, but you can check up this, and this is 100% true. And regarding this psychologist who had previous input regarding the case I was a witness in, someone can like go through the paperwork. They won't release it to me. I tried, being honest with you, and they said it was sealed. But I'm sure someone has the power to just go and just see if I'm lying or if I'm not lying. So that brings it up to 2015, and it's going to get a lot more crazier than this. But I leave it there before I keep rambling on too much. And that's for David Conlan telling people now that that friend request was fake. The only thing fake about that is your lies telling people it's fake. And that's 100% real. So I'll just leave it at that. And I'll make another video down now soon. And I'll address from 2015 and the farce of what happened in them courts. And you will not believe what I have to say. And as I said, anything I say, I have paperwork to support. But I want to explain it once and for all, and then I'll add the support and paperwork. Because I've been talking about explaining this for like, I don't know how long now, and I never actually get to the point of explaining it. So now I'll explain it. So that brings it up to 2015, and this all kicked off from that Baha'i religion and that psychologist and my ex need to be the center of attention in this religion. And you can check out our podcast, I'd imagine, on the two Norries, and I'll update what their response is and if I have to take legal action about that as well. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.